wake up tired, you go to bed tired, and somewhere in between, you keep asking yourself, why does it still feel like you haven't done enough? You've met your deadlines, you've responded to the emails, you've kept up the pace, yet you feel like you're falling behind in a race no one told you you were running. This isn't just stress, it isn't just overwork. You are trapped inside something deeper, a culture, a rhythm, a quiet system that has convinced you that rest must be earned, that you have to justify your existence through output, and that slowing down means you're losing. In today's world, it's not laziness that's the problem. It's productivity without purpose, hustle without direction, living in a society that rewards burnout with applause. In fact, research from the World Health Organization now classifies burnout as an occupational phenomenon, not just a feeling, but a legitimate condition caused by chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Yet even with that knowledge, most people don't slow down. They can't, because the real problem isn't the workload, it's the belief that you're only valuable when you're being used. And that belief, that invisible pressure, it runs deeper than your job title. It's wired into your phone, your feed, your self-worth. It's embedded in phrases like rise and grind, no days off, and you snooze, you lose. But who's really winning? You didn't wake up one day and choose this. It was handed to you, framed as ambition, packaged as responsibility, and sold as success. You've been conditioned to confuse exhaustion with excellence. This is the burnout society, and you're not the only one inside it. You're not just overwhelmed. You're submerged in a culture that rewards you for running on empty. The term burnout society wasn't born out of self-help books or TikTok trends. It came from philosopher Byung-Chul Han, who described our time as one where people no longer face external oppression, but rather internal pressure. You are no longer being forced to work. You're convincing yourself you must. And that's what makes it so dangerous. You tell yourself you're choosing to take on more. You say yes to that extra shift, that Sunday task, that late-night email. But is it really a choice if the cost of saying no feels like failure? Ask yourself, when was the last time you rested without guilt? In the burnout society, freedom becomes a trap. You're not being pushed by a boss anymore. You're being pulled by your own ambition, anxiety, and fear of falling behind. You're both the prison guard and the prisoner. And the bars, they're made of motivational quotes, self-improvement goals, and productivity hacks. According to a 2021 Gallup report, 76% of employees experience burnout at least sometimes, with 21% feeling burned out very often or always. But it's not just about work hours. It's about the mindset that convinces you rest is laziness, that your value is based on how much you produce, not who you are when you're still. Even when you're not working, you're thinking about work. Even when you have time off, you're trying to use it efficiently. Everything becomes a performance. And here's the worst part. You start to blame yourself. You think maybe you're not strong enough, not focused enough, not disciplined enough. But what if it's not you? What if you're just reacting perfectly to a broken system? Because in a burnout society, burnout isn't a symptom, it's the design. And once you see that, the next question hits harder than anything else. What exactly are you performing for? And who is watching? Let's talk about performance, because that's exactly what burnout society turns life into, a never-ending audition. Everything you do starts to feel like a stage. You perform at work to prove your worth. You perform on social media to prove your happiness. You perform self-care to prove you're managing it all. But ask yourself, when was the last time you did something just for you with no need to prove anything? In this part, we're diving into how society turns daily life into performance and why that illusion keeps you trapped. At the root of it is this belief: if you're not being seen, it doesn't count. And that's no accident. In a culture wired around visibility, likes, metrics, and personal branding, your very existence starts to feel like a job. You're encouraged to market your life as if it's a product, your achievements, your routines, even your personality. This trap starts early. Think about LinkedIn. A place meant for career networking slowly becomes a space where people post motivational quotes, daily routines, or promotions, not because they want to, but because not posting feels like falling behind. Even rest becomes a spectacle. You post your beach vacation with a caption about unplugging because just resting quietly doesn't feel valid unless someone else sees it. Here's the trap. You internalize the idea that your entire life must be optimized, shared, and celebrated, not lived. According to a study by the American Psychological Association, over 65% of adults report feeling pressure to be productive even during free time. That's not normal. That's the performance trap at work. You've become so used to broadcasting your effort, your success, even your self-care, that doing anything without an audience feels pointless. But is it really living if every moment has to be polished, posted, or praised? Here's something worth remembering. You were never meant to be a brand. You were meant to be a person, a flawed, unoptimized human being. And yet, in this burnout culture, even our most human moments, grief, rest, failure, get filtered through performance. But what happens when the mask starts to crack? What happens when you can no longer keep up the act? When the performance starts to break down, something unsettling is revealed. No one's yelling at you to do more. No one's threatening you if you rest, and yet you can't stop. That's what makes burnout society so powerful. You've become the enforcer. The pressure is no longer coming from a boss, a parent, or some external authority. It's coming from inside you. This part is about understanding how we internalize the pressure, how we slowly become our own source of stress, judgment, and exhaustion. In the past, people worked to survive. Now we work to be seen as worthy. Somewhere along the way, labor turned into identity. You stopped saying, "I have a job," and started saying, "I am my job." And when that job becomes your identity, failure doesn't feel like a moment. It feels like a collapse of self. You've probably heard this phrase before: if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But here's the truth. That quote, often credited to Confucius, has been twisted. What it really does in today's world is blur the line between work and life so completely that you no longer know how to exist outside of being productive. Psychologists call this self-exploitation. It's when you willingly push yourself beyond your limits. Not because someone asked you to, but because you believe you should. And the scary part, it doesn't feel like exploitation. It feels like discipline, like ambition, like strength. But discipline without compassion becomes self-abuse. In a 2022 Deloitte survey, 1 in 3 workers globally said they feel guilty taking breaks, even when their mental health is suffering, and yet no one is stopping them from resting except themselves. You wake up early, not because you have to, but because you feel like you're failing if you don't. You keep working through headaches, through weekends, through burnout, telling yourself it's just what needs to be done. But who decided that? At some point, the voice that once belonged to a teacher, a parent, or a boss became your own. And now, even when you're exhausted, you push forward, because to stop would mean facing a deeper fear that without constant achievement you have no value. And that's the cruel twist. You are no longer being oppressed. You are oppressing yourself in the name of success. But what if the success you're chasing isn't even yours? What if the path you're running down was built for someone else entirely? If you've ever said, "I chose this," when you're drowning in exhaustion, ask yourself, did you really? Or were you given a narrow set of options and told that freedom was simply picking one? This part is about breaking down the illusion of choice, how burnout society tricks you into thinking you're in control while quietly steering you toward overwork, comparison, and constant self-optimization. From the outside, it looks like you're free. You can start your own business, build your brand, pick your side hustle, set your goals. But in reality, most of those choices live inside a very specific framework. Productivity equals worth. Whether you're a freelancer, a corporate employee, or a student, the message is the same. You should always be working on something, even when you're not working. Think about the language. People now say things like, sleep is for the weak, or I'll rest when I'm dead. That isn't empowerment. That's exhaustion dressed up as ambition. According to a report from the International Labour Organization, over 4 out of 5 workers globally are either in informal or precarious employment. That means freedom often comes with no healthcare, no job security, and a constant need to prove your value. Is that really freedom, or just a more flexible kind of pressure? Even the choose your own path narrative has been hijacked. You can chase your dreams, but only if those dreams generate income, build a following, or become scalable. Passion is allowed, but only if it's monetized. So when you're told to follow your passion, it sounds empowering, but often it means turn your life into a brand, sell yourself, make everything a side hustle. And here's the catch. The more choices you're given, the more responsibility you feel for your own suffering. If you burn out, you don't blame the system. You blame yourself. I should have chosen better, managed my time better, worked smarter. But no matter how you rearrange the pieces, they're still part of the same game. And the game was never designed for you to win. So if this is the game, what's the cost of continuing to play? What exactly is burnout stealing from you before you even notice it's gone? You might think burnout just makes you tired, but fatigue is only the surface. What burnout truly steals is far more subtle and far more devastating. In this section, we're focusing on what you lose long before you even realize it's missing, because burnout doesn't come crashing in overnight. It slips in quietly. It takes without asking. The first thing it steals, joy. Not the explosive kind, the quiet, everyday kind, laughing at something silly, sitting in stillness, feeling proud of yourself, not because you achieved something, but just because you felt alive. Burnout numbs all of that. It replaces joy with duty, rest with guilt, curiosity with deadlines, and then it takes your creativity. You don't even notice it at first. Your ideas feel dry. Your mind feels foggy. You stare at screens, not because you're lazy, but because your brain is desperately trying to shut down the noise. In a constant loop of doing, you forget how to imagine, how to play, how to experiment. Psychologists call this cognitive fatigue. Studies show that chronic stress reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making, imagination, and problem-solving. Translation: burnout makes it harder to think clearly, to make choices, to envision new paths. It also damages relationships. You become irritable, distant, emotionally unavailable, not because you don't care, but because you have nothing left to give. Burnout convinces you that isolation is easier than connection, that it's better to disappear than explain how tired you really are. And slowly, it chips away at your identity. You start asking, who even am I when I'm not being productive? You might feel like a stranger in your own body, like someone who's constantly doing but no longer living. The World Health Organization links burnout to increased risk of depression, substance abuse, and even suicidal ideation. Not because people are weak, but because they've been worn down, quietly, consistently, by a system that tells them they're only as good as their last output. So if you're wondering why you feel disconnected, unfocused, numb, maybe even angry at yourself for not doing more, that's not a flaw in you. That's a signal from within. Burnout doesn't just steal your energy, it steals your sense of self. But here's the truth they never told you: you can take it back. The question is, how? Let's be clear. Escaping burnout doesn't mean quitting your job or disappearing from your life. It means redefining the rules you've been living by. It starts with this mindset shift. You are not a machine. You are not here to function, produce, and prove. You are here to live, to feel, to experience the world without needing to monetize every moment. And that might sound simple, but in today's world, it's radical. When you begin to unlearn the belief that your value is tied to your productivity, you'll notice something strange. Guilt. Guilt for resting, guilt for saying no, guilt for doing nothing. But that guilt, it's a leftover piece of programming. It's not a signal of laziness, it's a sign of healing. You're detoxing from a system that convinced you your worth was conditional. This is where you begin to reclaim your time, not just by blocking off hours in your calendar, but by choosing how you show up. You start setting boundaries, not to keep people out, but to protect your own peace. According to a 2022 study in Frontiers in Psychology, workers who took intentional mental recovery breaks throughout their day reported higher long-term productivity, stronger emotional regulation, and fewer symptoms of chronic burnout. So, no, stepping back isn't weakness, it's strategy. You also begin to reconnect with parts of yourself that had nothing to do with performance. The side of you that paints badly just for fun. The part that goes on a walk without tracking steps. The version of you that rests, not to recover, but to just be. And maybe most importantly, you stop asking, what should I be doing right now? And start asking, what do I actually need? That one question changes everything. Because the moment you stop treating rest like a reward, the moment you stop measuring your value by what you've accomplished, that's the moment you begin to wake up. But here's the final piece. Once you wake up, what comes next? This is where it gets real. Because awareness alone isn't enough. The culture that built this burnout trap doesn't vanish overnight. It still exists outside your door. It's in your workplace, your algorithm, your habits, your language. But now you see it. And once you see it, you get to decide how much power it keeps. This final part is about reclaiming your energy on your terms, not through hacks or routines, but by shifting your relationship with time, identity, and rest. You don't need another 5-step system. You need a new story, one where your worth is no longer tethered to how useful you are. Because the truth is, you were valuable the moment you woke up this morning, not because you got things done, not because you earned it, but because you exist, and that's enough. Let that settle. We live in a world that's constantly whispering, you should be doing more, but you get to respond, no, I choose to do less, but with intention. And no, it won't be easy. Some days, the old voice will come back. It'll say you're lazy, behind, or wasting time. But remember, that voice is not you. It's the echo of a system that profits from your exhaustion. So, take your time back, take your mind back, take your presence back. You're not behind, you're not broken. You're just tired of performing a version of yourself that was never sustainable. And that's not weakness, that's awakening. If this message reached you, if it stirred something in your gut or gave words to a feeling you've been carrying, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else who's quietly burning out and pretending they're fine. You're not alone in this. And you don't need to escape society to reclaim your energy. You just need to stop letting it define who you are.